So I've realized today that I've been playing TF2 for a very long time because a video I used to love when I had just started playing TF2 has now kind of turned 10 years old. And this video was from a creator called Aegis. I think it was Aces Gamer back in the day, but is where he traded from a weapon to an unusual in just a week. And he basically tells you exactly how he does it. And I always wanted to revisit this video and kind of just go through and price check the items that he's trading for and see how different they are nowadays to how they were 10 years ago. And let me just tell you now, you won't be able to follow the trading path he took anymore. It's literally impossible. And to be honest, I think it was still quite questionable in the day how he managed to pull it off. So let me just run you through it. The first couple of trades are him basically starting with a Jag because that's what he found from a drop. He sells it for a scrap. He buys two weapons, which he sold one for 2 scrap and the other one for 1. 10 years ago, that was absolutely possible. Traders didn't really use scrap.tf, or it wasn't really a thing back in the day. So far, everything is as I remember from 10 years ago. So after he has about a reclaimed worth of TF2 metal, so 0.33, he buys a strange power jack for that price, and that is what it's worth. So that is, you know, if you look at the price of that now, it is now worth 4.33 to 4.55 ref. So already that's a big change in the value of these items. After the strange power jack, he sells the power jack for a strange flamethrower, which he says at the time is worth 2 reclaimed, so 0.66. He's just doubled what he spent, which is, you know, a pretty good trade. But the strange flamethrower now is worth 14.66 to 14.77. Back in the day, these trades did make sense. I remember a lot of these items being a lot cheaper, but nowadays it's crazy just to see how different it is. He then sells the strange flamethrower for a strange back burner, which at the time was worth a refined metal. Getting a reclaimed profit on each trade isn't something that was unheard of. A lot of people would just take the hit because at the time trading wasn't too big and people were just trading for the items they wanted. However, a strange back burner today is worth 1 key, which right now is about equivalent to 63 refined. A bit of a jump, definitely a bit of a jump. And this is where it starts getting weird if you're going by today's prices. So he then trades the strange back burner, which was worth the refined at the time, for a bombing run, which was worth 1.33 at the time. Now it's worth 1.77 to 1.88. Basically, if he did this today, everybody would be wondering what was going on. But 10 years ago, that was a good trade. Like, he'd made a profit on that. He then trades for a few hats. I'm not going to go through every single hat because it's not really worth it. The price back in the day didn't really change too much. And to be honest, the price nowadays isn't really that different either until he trades an attendant that he got for a vintage Ushanka, which at the time was worth 2.66 refined metal. That hat today is worth nearly 2 keys. He then does a few more trades for like vintage hats. So he traded for a vintage Tyrant's helm, which nowadays is 31.33 ref, so that's quite a big drop. But then he trades for a vintage Merryweather, which nowadays is worth 2.3 keys. And then trades for a Procedures Mask, which is worth 1.1. So the value of like those 4 trades is absolutely crazy. Obviously, at the time, this all made sense. Like, he was making gradual steps towards getting an unusual. Each item was getting at least a little bit more expensive than the last one. But if you look at it now, he's all over the place. Okay, and then this bit is where it starts getting a little bit strange. So this physician's Procedures Mask at the time was worth 8 to 9 refined, he said. And that was, you know, a good couple of keys. Keys were only 2.33 ref back in the day. And he trades that Procedures Mask for a Last Breath, which I think at the time, the only price checks I could find for it was saying it was around 3 keys. A Last Breath now is worth 6.77 refined, but at the time, 3 keys, I remember the Last Breath being very expensive. So the trade he did after he got the Last Breath is for a clean Voodoo Juju. Now, he didn't say how much this cost in the video. I tried to find some price checks, and the only things I could find from around 10 years ago was that it was anywhere from 20 to 28 keys. Jumping up from 3 keys to 20 keys is mental. I also don't think I've got that price check right. I don't think I've found what the actual price of it was nearly 11 years ago at this point, because he didn't sell it for anywhere near 20 to 28 keys. Jumping up from a last breath to a clean Voodoo Juju, especially 11 years ago, was still crazy. Not as crazy as these prices are making it look right now, but still pretty crazy. And I know he didn't sell it for 20 to 28 keys or whatever it said it was worth at the time, because the next trade was for a Bill's hat, which apparently at the time was worth 7 or 8 keys. So in 2 trades from a last breath, which was apparently worth 3 keys, he's now at Bill's hat worth around 7 or 8, which is, you know, pretty good going, but it shows you kind of how strange that Voodoo Juju trade was. From there, he trades the Bill's hat for a genuine El Jefe, which is now worth 4.5 keys, so if he was doing these trades today, that's pretty good. Bill's hats are only worth 3.6 now. And then he trades that genuine El Jefe for a clean 2011 spine-chilling skull, which he didn't say how much it was, but nowadays is worth 8.5. Turns out, wasn't 8.5 keys, it was actually 40 to 75, which is mental. He sold that spine-chilling skull for a pair of earbuds, which was around 22 keys at the time. At least that's what I could find from price checks. And then he traded it for a gentleman's service medal. These trades always confuse me because of what he actually says in the video. I didn't know what item it was or how to find it, or really why this was a good trade, because even the price checks I could find from 10 years ago, this was only around 10-ish keys. So yeah, I'm a bit confused. Maybe I haven't looked back far enough. Maybe the one he had was fairly special. I don't know if it was like a low craft one. I have no idea what this was, why it was so expensive, but he still got something pretty good out of it. Because the next trade was for a vintage Fan of War, which at the time was worth 1.5 to 2 buds. Nowadays this item is worth 25 to 32 keys, and is an item that I've kind of wanted for a while, but never ended up buying. Still a very, very expensive item, because I don't really think they're meant to exist, or only a very small number of Fan of Wars existed when every item became vintage. It was that, or they were given back like as a glitch when some items got stolen when Valve used to restore accounts when he got hijacked and stuff. Either way, it's a glitched item, it's quite expensive, and that was the trade he made. I don't know what the service medal was worth at all, I can't find it, but yeah, it would have been in the middle of like an earbuds and the vintage Fan of War at the time. And then with that vintage Fan of War, I think he just decided that, you know, it's time to buy an unusual, finally do what he was setting out to do, and he bought himself an unusual Hustler's Hallmark with green confetti, which right now has an outdated price on backpack.tf of 10 to 13 keys. I mean, technically, if you look at the prices of the trades today, 0.5 scrap to 10 to 13 key unusual, not bad, but the journey of how we got there is absolutely crazy. Like, he had an item that today was worth 25 to 32 keys, and then he traded it for an item worth 10 to 13. Obviously at the time they made a lot more sense, but looking back at them now, not having any context to that, that's really weird to look through. I do remember thinking this was probably one of the coolest videos I had seen back when I was like heavy into trading, and I always wanted to try and do a scrap to unusual in a week myself and see what my path looked like. I think definitely the Voodoo Juju trade was a little bit questionable, and it made his path a lot easier than a normal one would look like, but I don't remember the prices back then. I doubt he really did anything wrong to get that trade, might have just got lucky. That's a big part of trading, I don't know. Watching this video again has got me super nostalgic about when I first started playing TF2 over 10 years ago now, and when I first started trading in TF2, because this is quite an accurate representation of what a scrap to unusual would have looked like back in the day. Like, people are willing to give you a bit of profit if you have an item that they wanted, and that is kind of how that used to work. It is so much harder, in fact I think it's nearly impossible to start from nothing nowadays and actually turn that into something. Like, if you started with a weapon and turn it into an unusual, I'm not sure how long that would take, but I remember it took me a long time to go from nothing to something when trading was easy at lower tiers. I can't imagine how long it would take me now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. It's a bit of a different style of video, but I actually really just enjoyed looking back on a video that I used to think was absolutely amazing, and something that really kind of defined what I started TF2 trading with, you know? Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.